Since 2000 BC, philosophers and anthropologists have been trying to answer one of the hardest questions known to mankind's existence, and that is whether you should go for the MacBook Pro M1 or the MacBook Air M1. Now, I have with me right now two laptops. One of them is the MacBook Air, and one of them is actually the MacBook Pro. Now, this is actually not the MacBook Air, and it is the closest thing I have to it. This is actually my sister's laptop that I took from her room without her knowing, and when she watches this video, she'll actually find out that I took it and I'm actually using this in this video. Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Mikey and I'm a university student here at the University of Waterloo in Canada. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when a new Apple product comes out, this excites me so much. The nerd inside of me basically comes out. Since I was younger, I was so fond of technology, and I actually created my own desktop setup using my dad's old computer stuff. So I basically made this whole computer by myself when I was younger. I think I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I did this because I was just interested in exploring the web and using computer because I was so interested in it. So when Apple released their new M1 computer that they made from scratch, basically, I was like, what the actual heck? I need to get my hands on this computer right away and see if this computer actually performs as well as they say it does. Now, if you clicked on this video to get a quick answer, I personally think the MacBook Air is a way better option if you are a student and you are particularly maybe on a budget, or even if you're not on a budget, I would recommend the MacBook Air. Now, if you keep watching in the video, I will be detailing 5 different reasons on why I think the MacBook Air is a way better option than the MacBook Pro. Now, the MacBook Air actually retails for $300 US cheaper than the MacBook Pro, or 400 Canadian dollars if you are here in Canada. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is actually battery. So I actually have 3 sisters, and my family has had its fair share of different MacBooks in our house. Me personally, I've had 2 different MacBooks, one that I got in the beginning of high school and one that I got in the beginning of university, basically against my will, because the one that I got in the beginning of high school broke down and it crashed on me. Now, all 3 of my sisters have had the exact same thing, except now they are much older than me, so some of them have actually, or 2 of them actually has had 3 different laptops. So if you look over here, let me just pull out some of the old ones. This is one of the earliest laptops that one of my sisters had. As you could see, it was very white, and this was actually the MacBook Air back in the day. It's pretty cool and pretty interesting to see how big the battery has developed. Now, with these old computers, the battery used to die in maybe 1 hour, 2 hours max after you've used it for at least 6 months. And that was really frustrating because you would always have to keep plugging it into a power source. And if you ever left the house, you would always have to make sure that you were near a power source to plug it into. And that was so annoying. Now, with the new MacBooks, the new MacBook Air actually has 18 hours of battery life. This is way higher than the regular MacBooks Pros and the MacBook Air that were released before the M1. Keep in mind, both of these laptops have the M1 chip, which is the new chip that Apple created by themselves. Now, with the MacBook Pro actually has 20 hours. Yes, it has an extra 2 hours of battery life, but if you think about it, like, is there going to be really a big difference between 18 or 20 hours of battery life? Probably not, considering that you're not going to be out of your house for 20 hours a day working in a specific coffee shop without a power source, without a battery, non-stop working at the same time. Like, what are the odds that all of those 3 scenarios at the exact same time? Very minimal. And is it worth the extra, 400 Canadian dollars? Definitely not, especially for that extra 2 hours of battery life. Now, the next factor is weight and portability. So the MacBook Air is actually 90 grams lighter than the MacBook Pro. And if I were to measure it, you could definitely tell a difference between both of them. And this is a very big factor because as a student, you're gonna be commuting and moving around the city, your university campus a lot, or just moving in and out of the house a lot and fairly often with your computer. And so you're gonna be carrying this computer on your back. Now, although 90 grams might not make a difference today or tomorrow, if you do it for a long period of time and you're consistently putting this computer in your bag to carry around for a long period of time, this will actually be a factor that you should take into account when you are purchasing your computer. So one of the major differences why the MacBook Air is actually lighter is because it doesn't have the fan, like I told you. It doesn't have the touch bar. And that actually brings me to my next point, which is the touch bar, and why I think the touch bar is probably one of the most useless inventions that Apple ever made. Now, the next factor is efficiency. So the question is, if they have the exact same chip, why the heck is one 400 Canadian dollars more expensive than the other one? And that comes down to a couple things. The first thing is the touch bar. The second thing is the fan. And the third thing is the battery life. So I already talked about the battery life, but what I want to talk about right now is the actual fan. So if you have a Mac right now, if you have any computer, you've definitely been in the situation where, you're doing the most minimal work ever. Like maybe you're even scrolling through Safari, you're scrolling through Google Chrome, and your fan turns on. It's like, what the heck? Why is my fan turning on? This makes no sense for it to turn on right now. And that has to do with a lot of factors. However, with the new M1 chip, Apple has basically like allowed thermal capabilities of the MacBook to be very, very well done. So the fan rarely turns on. The only time a fan would probably turn on for an M1 computer, or based on my experience, is when I'm editing a video very, very intensely, and I've been working on it maybe for like 8 hours. If you're a student, most likely you won't be in that situation. Or when I have like different desktops open, I usually have like 6 or 7 desktops open with like different like web browsers on every single one, with like a Microsoft Word document with OnCue open, which is my flashcard system, while editing a video, like usually when I have so many things open. However, when I have like 2 desktops open and I'm working on a research article and I have Microsoft Word open, I have a web browser open, I have my messages open, and I have notes open, the fan never turns on. And I've also watched other YouTube videos to see if this was just me or if this was actually a big thing, and all the other YouTubers, the big tech YouTubers, actually talked about how the fan rarely turns on for the M1 computers just because of how efficient and how well put together they are. And so since you won't be using all this, the fan is essentially useless. Theoretically, if you were to buy the MacBook Pro, the odds of the fan actually turning on would be very minimal to none. Now, personally, I think the touch bar is very useless, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I rarely use it, to the point where the old buttons were more reliable than they are now. If you have a MacBook Pro with a touch bar, you probably know that it glitches sometimes, and when it does glitch, those are super annoying, especially when you're trying to do something really quickly and it glitches on you. You just get really frustrated, really flustered, and you're like, what the heck? Why is it doing this? Now, this is not to say that no one uses the touch bar and that, no one has any use for it at all. I could probably see graphic designers, architects, people that do engineers, maybe even people that use specific operating systems that take advantage of the touch bar. Maybe they would have a use for it. But if you've looked online in anywhere in the tech world, you've probably seen that people agree with my opinion and that the touch bar is very useless. And that is mainly due to its reliability, like I said earlier. Now, the touch bar is a very expensive piece of technology that is integrated into the MacBook for no reason. It's made of OLED, which is organic light emitting diodes. So what is the point of putting a technology so expensive and so well done in a MacBook, especially if it's only going to be used in a very small part of the MacBook? Now, the final thing we're going to talk about is the actual screen. Now, the MacBook Pro has 500 nits of brightness, while the MacBook Air has 400 nits of brightness. And this whole concept of nits is just basically how bright a laptop can become. Now, yes, there is a big difference in 100 nits of brightness. Like, this will make a big difference if you work outside a lot. Let's say you live anywhere near a beach or anywhere that you could work outside. Having more nits of brightness would be beneficial for you to actually work outside, because when there is glare of the sunlight on your screen, usually it's very hard to see your screen. Anytime you guys go outside, I'm sure you've noticed that whenever you want to use your phone screen, sometimes you can't see it as well as if you are inside, and that's because there's direct sunlight on your screen. So what I would recommend is that if you do work outside a lot, let's say in your school, you like working outside, I don't know, maybe you guys have tables outside that you could study on, then maybe the MacBook Pro would be beneficial in this specific case, just because you work outside so much and the 100 nits of brightness actually do make a pretty drastic difference. However, if even like 80% of the time you work is inside and 20% is outside, then I would actually say to go with a MacBook Air, because you won't notice that big of a difference, because most of the time would be when you're inside. If you do have the extra money to spend, of course, go with the MacBook Pro. Why not? You really have nothing to lose. But how many people can say that they have an extra 400 Canadian dollars or 300 US dollars to just spend like that on any computer they want? Usually that is not the case, right? Now, those are the 5 big differences. In my personal opinion, it comes down to basically 3 different things: battery life, performance, and screen. Now, like I said earlier, if you are on a budget, definitely go with the MacBook Air, because you're basically gonna get the exact same performance as the MacBook Pro. However, if you have the extra 400 Canadian dollars or 300 US dollars to spend, feel free to splurge and put it on a MacBook Pro. Like, of course, that would be better because you have an extra, you have an extra 100 nits of brightness, extra 2 hours of battery life, you have the fan, you have the OLED screen, screen. But all this stuff is fairly useless if you work inside most of the time, and during this pandemic it's fairly useless for a lot of things. And even if you study in a library, this is all fairly useless to you. And then essentially what you have to do is just figure out what works for you and then go and buy that actual computer for this upcoming year. Usually in the summer, Apple has a lot of student deals where you get free AirPods or you get free Beats when you buy an actual computer. So I would recommend just waiting up until the summer when that deal actually comes on, so you could actually get that for free. And if you don't like it, you could always just sell those AirPods or those Beats and make the money back. It's probably like $200 or $300 that you can make back, and you basically decrease the price of the computer very drastically. And that basically sums up the video. Basically, like I said earlier, my recommendation is to go for the MacBook Air in 2021 that has the M1 chip. Make sure you get the one with the M1 chip, not the one with the Intel Core chip. And I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and like down below if you want to see more content and more videos like this from me. Take care and take it easy. I'll see you guys on the next one.